19 seconds. That is how long Pam Bondi sat completely motionless after Chuck Schumer placed the first document on the table, not reaching for her water glass, not glancing at her attorneys, not adjusting the microphone, motionless. The particular stillness of someone who has just watched something they believed was permanently buried surface in a Senate hearing room in front of every camera in Washington. Schumer had been waiting 8 weeks for this moment, and Bondi had no idea what was inside that folder. Here is exactly what happened. The hearing had been running for nearly 2 hours. Republican members had praised Bondi's leadership, her commitment to transparency, her promises to the American people about accountability and openness. Bondi had handled every question the same way, composed, measured, the practiced confidence of a former attorney general who had spent decades in Florida courtrooms and Washington press conferences learning how to control a room. She smiled at a colleague. She checked her notes once. She leaned back slightly in her chair. That was the last comfortable moment she would have in that room, because Chuck Schumer had been sitting at the far end of that committee table for the entire hearing with a single gray folder in front of him, closed, untouched. He hadn't asked one question through 2 hours of testimony. He had simply sat there, completely still, waiting. Schumer has been in the United States Senate for over 2 decades. He has sat in more hearing rooms than almost anyone alive. He knows what a well-prepared question looks like. He knows what a trap looks like, and he knows the difference between a witness who is ready and a witness who only thinks they are. At 3:08 p.m., the chairman recognized him. Schumer opened the folder. "Attorney General Bondi," he said, and his voice was quiet, almost conversational. "I want to talk to you about a commitment. Specifically, a commitment you made to the American people on February 14th of this year, on national television. On the record." Bondi's expression didn't change. She had made many statements. She had her answers ready. "You stated, and I am quoting directly from the transcript," Schumer said, "that the sealed federal case materials, the complete investigative record, was sitting on your desk, your exact words, sitting on my desk right now to review." He set the transcript on the table. That was 147 days ago. "Attorney General Bondi, can you tell this committee what happened to those records?" 2 seconds of silence. "Senator, the review process for sensitive federal investigative materials involves multiple layers of legal and procedural considerations that—" "I didn't ask about the review process." Schumer's voice didn't rise. It simply became more precise. "I asked what happened to the records. 147 days ago, you confirmed they were on your desk. Today I am asking where they are." The room had gone quiet. Not the polite quiet of people waiting for the next sentence. The particular quiet that settles over a hearing room when everyone present understands that something real is happening. Bondi's right hand, which had been resting open on the table, closed slowly. Her senior attorney, seated directly behind her, leaned forward almost imperceptibly. "Senator, the department has been conducting a thorough and careful review of all materials consistent with our legal obligations and—" 147 days, Schumer said. He reached into the folder and produced a second document. He didn't hold it up dramatically. He just set it flat on the desk in front of him and looked at it for a moment. "This is a timeline my staff prepared. Every public statement your office has made about the status of those sealed records since February 14th. I want to read you some of what we found." He looked down at the page. February 14th. "You confirm the records are on your desk." February 28th. "Your press office states the review is ongoing." March 15th. "Your office declines to provide a timeline." April 3rd. "Your deputy states the matter is under active legal review." May 19th. "Your office states no further updates are available." June 7th. "Your press secretary declines to comment." July 2nd. "Your office states the review process is continuing." He set the document down. 147 days. 7 public statements. Not one of them contains a single specific detail about what the review found, what the timeline is, or when, if ever. The American people will be told what is in those records. He looked directly at Bondi. "Attorney General, I want to give you the opportunity right now, on the record, in front of this committee, to tell the American people what your department found in those 147 days of review. What is in those sealed records? 19 seconds of silence. Every camera in the room repositioned. Every journalist in the gallery had stopped filing. 3 Republican members who had spent the morning defending Bondi were now very carefully studying their own notes. Because 19 seconds of silence from an attorney general in response to a question about records she publicly confirmed were on her desk is not a pause. It is an answer, and everyone in that room understood exactly what kind of answer it was. Bondi finally spoke. Her voice had changed. The practiced fluency was still there, but something underneath it had shifted. Senator, I want to be very clear with this committee. The Department of Justice takes its obligations to the American people with the utmost seriousness. The review process for materials of this sensitivity requires. What did you find? Schumer asked. Bondi stopped. You have had 147 days. You have had the full resources of the Department of Justice. You confirmed the records were in your possession. I am asking the simplest possible question. What did your department find when it reviewed those records? 4 seconds. Senator, there are ongoing legal considerations that prevent me from characterizing the contents of sealed federal investigative materials in an open. The records are sealed, Schumer said. You confirmed they were on your desk. Those 2 facts exist simultaneously. Either you reviewed them and you are choosing not to tell this committee what you found, or you have not reviewed them in 147 days despite confirming publicly that you had them. He paused. Which is it? The silence that followed lasted 11 seconds. Bondi's jaw moved slightly. Her hand pressed flat against the table. Her lead attorney rose halfway from his chair and then sat back down. A movement that every camera in the room caught and that 3 journalists later described in identical terms as the gesture of someone who had just realized there was nothing left to object to. Senator, I can assure this committee that the Department of Justice has been conducting this review with the full rigor and professionalism that the American people deserve. That is not an answer to my question. Schumer's voice was flat. Final. I asked which of 2 things is true. You reviewed the records and you are not telling this committee what you found. Or you have not reviewed them in 147 days. Those are the only 2 options. I want you to tell this committee which one is accurate. 8 seconds. The review process is ongoing. Schumer nodded once, slowly. The way someone nods when they have received exactly the answer they expected, and it is exactly as revealing as they knew it would be. The review is ongoing, he said quietly. 147 days. And the review is still ongoing. He picked up the timeline document, stacked it on top of the transcript, set both in a neat pile to his right. Attorney General Bondi, on February 14th, you told the American people those records were on your desk. You said it on national television. You said it with the full authority of the office you hold. And today, 147 days later, you are telling this committee the review is still ongoing. He folded his hands. The people in this country who have been waiting for answers, who have watched promise after promise go unfulfilled, who have watched deadlines pass without explanation, who have watched the review that was supposed to take weeks turn into months. They deserve more than ongoing. They deserve an answer. He looked directly at her. I am formally requesting that this committee subpoena the complete review record, all internal communications related to the status of those sealed materials, and a written explanation from your office of why 147 days of review has produced no public result. He paused. Because Attorney General Bondi, when you said those records were sitting on your desk, the American people believed you. They are still waiting, and the silence coming from your department is the loudest thing anyone has heard out of Washington in months.